You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important, useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just want to thank everybody for all their support. So many of you have shared our show, Boomers Today, with family and friends. And I just want to thank you so much for doing that. Many of you, our growing list of listeners, are coming right from our app. We have a free app called Boomers Today that you could download right on your iPhone or Android phone. Of course, you could get to the show on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher. There's so many different podcast stations out there, and we're on them. So we thank you for that. You could also go directly to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. And there's a reason why so many of you are sharing our podcast with family and friends, is because we have fantastic guests and very, very knowledgeable on particular subject matters, and today's no different. We have with us Tara Faquir, who is co-founder and CEO of Trustate. Tara earned her BS in economics from the University of Miami and her M.B.A. from Fox School of Business at Temple University. Tara has spent the past decade working at a variety of companies from Fortune 500s to billion-dollar startups, and with her, she brings to Trustate a deep understanding of sales, operations, and team management, along with a passion for learning and entrepreneurship. So, Tara, I hope I didn't botch up the name. Did I do all right?
No, it was perfect. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Well, thanks for joining us. So we're going to be talking about estate and planning for your estate and all of that. And I know that the name of your company is Trustate, but it's spelled like trust, right? Trustate. Right?
It is.
All right, I like that. That's kind of cool. Great. So when I hear estates, and as you know, I'm in the industry and in the senior care industry, and we talk about estate and estate planning and all of that. To me, I think it's kind of maybe not the best name in the world. Kind of like power of attorney to me isn't a good name either. It just seems like, power of attorney, I got to go hire an attorney to do all this. And estates kind of, to me, also sounds like this is something only for the wealthy. So is that true?
So I think that, that is one of the major misconceptions out there, is that every single person has an estate, whether that estate is made up of $10,000 or $100 million. An estate is essentially everything that one owns, and in a very simplified manner. So an estate is not just for the wealthy; it's for people of all walks of life.
So I know you're going to share with us maybe some of the misconceptions about estate administration. That might be one of them, right?
Absolutely. I think that's what people find when they, unfortunately, when they lost a loved one and they think, this is a small estate. It's going to be easy. An estate, regardless of the size, there's still hundreds of tasks associated with it. So really, an estate, again, whether it's $10,000 or $100 million, the process is the same. It just, there's a few more zeros at the end of one.
Gotcha. So what are some other misconceptions?
Yeah, I think that, the main misconception is that, this is legal work and that you need a lawyer in order to settle an estate. That's not the case. And for the most part, the majority of estate work is strictly administrative. So, the idea behind Trustate is really to help people save them time and save them a lot of money, because you don't need to pay unnecessary legal fees to settle an estate. For instance, one of the things that someone might have to do when settling a loved one's estate is close out the cable bill. but you don't need a law degree to close a cable bill. You just need some time. But that's something that a lot of people don't have. People are busier than ever. And, I think that, another misconception is that because an estate may be perceived to be small, that a loved one can complete it in a small amount of time. But a little known fact is that it actually takes the average person over 34,000 minutes to settle an estate, and that's regardless of size. So, I don't know who has 34,000 spare minutes. I think that some people struggle to find 20 minutes in their day, never mind tens of thousands. So, really, the costs and the time associated with estate administrations is one of the misconceptions, is that it is costly and that it can be done in less time, but it's actually the opposite.
So why would you say pretty much anybody should do this type of planning or preparation, as you call it, estate preparation? Why is it important for everybody to do it? What if they don't?
Sure. That's a great question. So one of the things that we like to educate people on is that, people think about estate planning, and that's really the drafting of the will. And that's important. And that's where that legal expertise comes in, and people should see a lawyer for that. But there's this whole thing about estate prep. What does that mean? Well, that's everything beyond the trust and the will. So when you are prepping an estate, whether you're prepping to plan or you are prepping because perhaps you are taking care of aging parents and know that, unfortunately one day that you will be the executor of that estate, and you're trying to figure out what is, all in that estate, that's part of the prep work. So, what we do, one of the tools we use called the Trustate Toolkit, walks somebody through an estate in its entirety, and we go well beyond the trust and the will. So, for instance, some things that people need to think about when prepping an estate are, does that person have pets? Well, that and a pet wouldn't be necessarily noted in a will. I mean, sometimes you see crazy stories that they are,
Right.
But most of the time a pet is, it's somebody's beloved animal, but it's not in the will. But if somebody were to pass away, what happens to that pet? There has to be a plan for that. That's something that should be prepped. Something that we see a lot of right now is social media. So more and more people are joining social media platforms of all ages. And when someone passes away, there has to be an access for that executor to close out that social media account or memorialize it. People don't realize until it happens the grief and the additional stress and frustrations that can be caused by social media, because a loved one who has since passed now has an active social media account. Those are things that, we think about. We go into details about firearms. People ask, like, well, why is a firearm part of an estate? Well, it is because it's something that someone has to either, get rid of, sell. And if you are not a registered carrier, it makes that process very difficult. So thinking through, if you do have firearms, who that beneficiary of those should be. So that's the prep work. And as you can see, that those are things that wouldn't necessarily be part of the will. So the prep goes beyond that will and trust.
So let's try to categorize it in simple terms.
Mm-hmm.
What's the areas that you would be assisting a family or an individual with?
Mm-hmm.
And what would be the types of things that you would recommend that they would go to an attorney for?
Sure. So there's kind of two parts to that question. There's a during life part, and then there's after somebody has passed away. So focusing on the estate prep during life, we have a tool that walks somebody through all these areas. So we do basic information, relationships, accounts and liabilities, retirement and benefits, an often overlooks section. And then we go into real property, specialty property, personal property. So those are kind of the buckets that we go through from a prep standpoint. What we do then is we give people back customized recommendations for all the prep items they should be thinking about. Some of the things we'll outline are things they can do on their own. Like they could set up a legacy contact on their Facebook account. So if God forbid something happens that, there's someone who has access. But there's also going to be things in there that require an expert. That expert could be their lawyer. It could be a financial advisor. It could be an insurance carrier. So someone who there's a gap somewhere that requires that expertise. That's when we refer out. So we might have a client who, maybe they don't have a will. That's something that should absolutely be handled by an expert. So, we identify the gaps and then make the recommendations for where they should go. And if they don't have those existing relationships, we're happy to introduce them to people who we know or, give really wonderful service.
Great. So what's your experience and when do people come to you? Do they come to you? I mean, in a perfect world, well, maybe I'll give it a two-part question.
Okay.
Perfect world, when should people come to you, and what's the reality of what?
Sure. Perfect world, they are coming to us during their lifetime to do some of these estate prep exercises. So clients that we help today are typically people who have just experienced a life change. So maybe they're, young in their life and they just had their first child. Well, as you can imagine, that really changes one's estate.
Sure.
So that would need an estate attorney for that. But then we also have people who come to us because they are the children of aging parents and know that, they are going to be tasked with this, this project of closing that parent's estate at some point, and they want to start prepping now with their parents. And as you can imagine, that can be an awkward conversation to talk to your parents and say, hey, mom and dad, I need to know where your safety deposit box is because, right. The prep part of it in our Trustate toolkit is the framework for that somewhat uncomfortable conversation where people can work through it together and have that open and honest conversation, because as uncomfortable as it can be, it's a lot easier to have that conversation today than after somebody passes. So in an ideal world, working with people during their life is wonderful. What typically happens is a family member calls us after their loved one has passed away. And that's when the estate administration portion of our business begins. So that's okay. A lot of people just, as I mentioned, they don't necessarily think about these things because they don't want to. And I understand that's going to be hard. But we can help the estate with an estate after someone has passed away and do all the things that we need to do to get that loved one's estate closed, giving that family that space to grieve. So, ideally it's during life, but most of the time it's after that loved one has passed.
So do you get involved? I mean, we talk like social media. So the person has passed away and, hey, dad never passed on his passwords to us.
Right.
Now what do we do? Are those types of things that you get involved with?
Yeah, we do. So our estate administration process really handles everything from discovery of assets to closing out those cable bills to notifying and negotiating with creditors. And that's a big one that I just want to highlight for a second, because unfortunately, when obituaries are posted, there's some predators that come out of the woodwork, and people in the state of when they're grieving, they often just pay bills that are actually completely fraudulent. So we work with creditors there to see what's real and what's not. And then, part of it is the social media. So, there are things, if dad didn't leave his social media username or password and didn't set up a legacy contact in Facebook or whatnot, we can actually provide all the documents that are needed, for example, to LinkedIn to get that account either memorialized or closed. And that's really up to the family as to which they'd like to do. But that's actually an involved process. It actually requires legal paperwork, the death certificate and whatnot to actually close that account. But that's work that we can do on that client's behalf so that they don't have to do that.
Yeah, it is odd. I mean, sometimes I'll get like a notification, whether it be on Facebook or LinkedIn, saying, would you like to friend this person? Mm-hmm. And I happen to know that person's not alive anymore, but it's
right.
It's kind of odd. It is
a
little uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable. And if if you were very close with that person, imagine, that feeling of maybe it's a year later or 6 months later and that pops up and it's someone, having fun at, a family picnic. That can be heart stopping for a lot of
Right.
people. And
Exactly.
it's not a great feeling. So memorializing and closing those accounts is really ideal, but a lot of people don't know how to go about doing that.
Tara, we're going to take a quick break real quick. We'll be right back. Just want to recognize our sponsor. I want to come back and let people know how they could get a hold of you, and we'll talk about some resources and things like that. All right?
Great.
So I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, nursing, or if you just need an advocate to get some advice from. A local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor right in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com, and you'll find an advisor. So welcome back. We are with Tara Faquir, who is the co-founder, CEO of Trustate. And it's really interesting. It's a great concept.
Thank you. Thank you.
And even though I know you're based in Florida, because you're not, you're not attorneys, all right? Mm-hmm. But so you can service people all over the country, right?
We can. We are nationwide and happy to help anybody across the country.
So tell us about that. Tell us how people could get a hold of you, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest way is to visit our website, which is www.trustate.com, and that's true, Trustate, so no E there. And there's a bunch of resources on our website about our services, our products, and just some great educational materials as well. So that's the best way. But if you're looking to get a hold of us via email, it would just be info@trustate.com. Or you can always pick up the phone and call us at 443-599-8701.
Gotcha. So as it relates to trusts, I mean,
mm-hmm.
I know that would be kind of the referral to an attorney, but
mm-hmm.
And again, if this is an area that you'd rather not speak about,
mm-hmm.
all right, I'm okay with that. But just kind of pluses and minuses of a living trust. What would you say to somebody who might ask you that question?
Sure. So this is typically,
what?
Yeah. So this is typically where my business partner, Leah, she's the attorney.
Oh, got it. Okay,
so I would really refer these questions to her.
Okay,
but I know what she would say in this is that if we were helping somebody prepping their estate, again, at any age, we would absolutely suggest that they seek the expertise of an estate and trust attorney for this, because it's complex work and it's something that you really want someone who has experience in the industry to help you with, because this is the way that your estate will essentially pan out over the course of your life. And of course, you're going to be updating it, or we hope that you're updating it, but you really want a good foundation today. So we highly recommend seeking the expertise of an estate and trust lawyer. We realize that there are some tech companies out there that have, some more, digital options for creating wills and trusts. But I think that, an expertise in this area is really necessary.
Great. So what are some of the things you feel people can do to make sure their estate is sound?
Sure. I think that, the number one thing they can do is let me back up for a second. If they're the child of an aging parent, so they're the boomers of today, I highly recommend having that somewhat uncomfortable conversation with mom and dad, because there are things that you can do today. For instance, we were just working with a client who was using our Trustate toolkit as a way to prep with his parents' estate. And he had said he went to visit his family, and there was just piles of paperwork. And in that those piles of paperwork was the prepaid funeral information. It took him hours to uncover it, but he did. And he was able to do that because his dad was saying, oh, it's somewhere in this office. It's somewhere in one of those piles. It doesn't seem like a big thing today, but if someone were to pass away and then you had to go to their home and try to find that paperwork while grieving, it's going to be a lot longer of a process. And then what might happen is you might end up paying for the funeral expenses just because you feel like you have to make these decisions quickly, and then weeks later find that this paperwork was actually there and the funeral was repaid for. So, having those conversations today and asking where things are, it's really important that people do that, because it's going to save so much time and stress and sadness, after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that your type of a service is, not well known, right? I mean, the normal person wouldn't know. I mean, I'm learning. All right.
Right.
I've been in the business for a while. So are most of your business coming referrals from attorneys themselves?
Yeah. So the majority of our business comes from our preferred partners, which right now are our wealth managers and financial advisors.
Gotcha, right.
We do get referrals from attorneys though as well. We give a lot of that planning work, as I mentioned, back to the attorneys. So they, often give us the estate administration work. So it really is a referral based business, but, part of this is getting the word out and letting people know that there are other resources. There are ways that, they can, have help during their lifetime to prep, or, after a loved one passes away. They do not have to go it alone, and it does not have to deplete the entire estate money-wise in order to do it. So, we are actively trying to get the word out, but right now it is really referral based from our partners.
So as it relates to what you call estate administration or estate preparation, let's talk about some of the resources.
Sure. So estate prep, as I mentioned, we created a really cool tool called the Trustate Toolkit. It's patent pending, so it's the only one out there of its kind. So we like to think of ourselves as the only resource for estate prep, and it's really a way, again, that someone can have that holistic view of their estate, and it really sets that tone for the things that they should be thinking about over the course of their life. So, we are the experts in estate prep, and then we refer out to those other experts for the planning. As far as estate administration, right now, most people, they do lean on their financial advisors or lawyers, or they try to do it alone. On our website, we have several resources, from blog posts to we actually have an ebook, What to Do When Someone Dies, that really goes through the things that you need to do within the first 48 hours and then the first 6 months. And I think those are things that, sometimes you just need to see a checklist. So there are some resources on our website as well. We are constantly compiling and creating new content to give people the additional resources they need. But to start with, Trustate.com is a really good resource.
Great. So that would probably be your recommendation of where to start. So right to your website, or you think they should talk to you first? What's the best way for someone to start if they're thinking about this?
Great question. So I would suggest going to our website, and right there you can contact us from the site, and we ask, what time you could set up a consultation. We're happy to do a free consultation and really walk you through what product might be great for you today. We have, some other products like our estate vault where people can start to store that paperwork and those important documents over the course of their lifetime. So we really like to evaluate where somebody is in their life, or what events they might have coming up, or if they're caring for those aging parents, and assess like what's the best way we can help them today. And we're always here to answer questions via phone, email, on our social media. We really want to be the go-to resource for folks.
So we have actually just a couple minutes left. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to give you a toughie.
All right.
I think you're going to handle it.
I'm nervous.
All right. And we deal with this all the time. All right. Mm-hmm. So adult child comes to you.
Yeah.
Okay. They're in their 50s, mm-hmm. maybe even in their 60s. I'm not mm-hmm. talking about somebody, and they're having a tough time getting mom and or dad to talk about this. Mm-hmm. Like, don't worry, everything's fine. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm feeling fine. Don't worry. Stop it. All mm-hmm. right. How do you advise them?
Sure. So a lot of times what we tell people to do is blame us, blame Trustate, take the blame off of yourself, because, going through these questions that we ask people, it does take that pressure off that child and kind of, in a way, point a finger at, like, look, these are questions that I'm being asked, and I just need your help answering them. The other thing that people can do is, in our toolkit, there's an option that they can either answer the question for themselves or on behalf of someone else. So they can take a stab at answering questions on behalf of mom and dad and seeing what those recommendations are today without mom and dad's input, and then those recommendations will come back, and maybe that's starting the conversation. The other thing that we've done is we are happy to get on the phone with the entire family, because it is a family conversation and oftentimes a family decision. So sometimes mom and dad need to be able to ask their questions as well, and we're happy to do that. So we want to meet people where they're at in the process, and whatever we need to do to make that happen, we're happy to do.
Great. Tara, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Why don't you just share with everybody again your contact information, your website, and before we sign off here.
Sure. So the website is www.trustate.com, and that's trustate.com. You can email us at info@trustate.com, or give us a call at 443-599-8701. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, so you can also follow us on those social media platforms as well.
Great. Thank you, Tara Faquir, who is co-founder of Trustate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.